Mac Rhodes, Ann Richards, LJ Cryer all have this weekend circled on their respective calendars. We know you do. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a crossover edition of Locked On Cougs ahead of this fun weekend of Big 12 basketball. I'm one of your hosts, Parker Ainsworth, host of Locked On Cougs, and I'm joined by Locked On Baylor's Cam Stuart. Cam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Parker. How are you?
I'm good, except I'm realizing I forgot Art Briles in the open. We have a fun weekend planned.
Man.
And I don't know.
And he can actually circle it on his calendar. And Richards can't.
Yeah.
Missed
I thought that was part of the charm of it, but he could actually circle it on his calendar. God, these two schools really do go back and forth a whole lot there for a second.
Yeah. And we almost get RG3. Almost that. I mean, he was committed to UH. So,
and I mean, honestly, you know, like something that could have changed program histories. God, fun basketball game this weekend between the number 2 Houston Cougars and the number 11 Baylor Bears. All that's going to get changed after kind of chaos, craziness in the top 10 on Monday's AP poll, regardless of what happens this weekend, obviously. But it's also two of the top end of the Big 12 teams. It is not mathematically impossible either one of these teams wins the conference outright. It's not mathematically impossible either one of them comes in like 4th.
Don't you love it, man?
A weird conference. Cam, I want to ask, because my folks have always been watching Houston. Baylor, 19-7, 8-5 in conference play. How has things been going in Waco this year?
I mean, up and down. The downs have not been too down. The best way I can put it, Parker, is I just really wish we were in the ACC sometimes. Be like 22-4, 2 conference losses. Be fantastic to just be in the ACC one of these days, let alone the Pac-12. Good Lord. What's interesting about it is that Baylor lost to BYU the other day, and it was not their best performance at all. And they still kept it close throughout the whole game. And before that, it was really the best stretch they'd had all season. I mean, it was 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6, the lone loss coming in that stretch coming at Allen Fieldhouse. And they had, and I think still have, figured the things out that they hadn't figured out at the beginning of the conference schedule, where they were kind of turning the ball over too much and they were too reliant on the threes. They've guys fit into their roles. Jaden Nunn specifically, who was a guy who was probably their worst starter a month ago. He was killing them at times. And all he did last week was be the Big 12 player and newcomer of the week. 47 points and 0 turnovers in 2 games. Like he's been fantastic to turn it around. RayJ Dennis, the point guard, has started scoring more. So everyone has kind of contributed more, found their roles, been comfortable in their roles. And then the loss to BYU happens. Was it good? No. Does it derail their season? Also, no. It doesn't help their Big 12 championship hopes for sure. But it absolutely doesn't take away from what this team can be and what they were before that. So overall, pretty good. Now, the biggest problem, Parker, though, is there's been this thorn in our side, and we haven't even played them yet. It's just because they've been so damn good, and that is the Houston Cougars. I don't like necessarily hyping up the other guy in my crossover. I want to break them down, but like this has just been a treat to watch if you're a real college basketball sicko. If you're a casual college basketball fan, you're probably like, what the heck am I watching? So you mentioned it's been crazy, this conference. How have you been finding the new Big 12?
I think Houston found some adjustment things they had to work on at the start of it. I was about to say some problems, but they really kind of have looked like they fixed those things. I think there's still every team's got to get better, right? Mm-hmm. But Houston entered conference play undefeated in non-conference, and while they had 4 quad 1 wins, which counts, pretty well for your tournament hopes and things like that, people are critical of the non-conference play. They show up to the Big 12, and they blow out West Virginia on opening conference day.
This is going to be easy.
Yeah, what are we doing
go.
here? And then they go to Iowa State and at TCU, both challenging places to play, but I don't know that people knew how good those teams were at that point in the year. And they lose 2 games by a combined 5 points. And it's like, oh, this is going to be rough. And then
I think that's like the big difference, right? Like, I know you guys have heard, oh, it's not the American anymore, but it's like that middle of the pack, right? Iowa State's better than that, but like the TCUs, the BYUs, the Techs, the Oklahomas this year, it's like that middle of the pack versus Tulane or Memphis, or you know what I mean? Like it's so much different. It's must have sounded cliche coming from outside of the conference, but it really is. Like, any given night, anything can happen.
Well, it keeps showing your P's and Q's, because then, so they lose those 2 games by combined 5 points. They beat Tech at home. They beat Central Florida at home. And then they go to Provo, Utah. You know as well as anyone in the last 48 to 72 hours that's a tough place to play. Houston finds themselves down at various points in the second half of that game. And it's like, are we ever going to win a road game again? Like, are we going to win a road? They turn things around and won that one.
The outsiders outside of Houston were like, oh, that's a good win.
It is a good win. BYU remains to be is remaining a top 25 team.
Yeah.
They went to and lost at Kansas by 13. I think that's kind of the biggest blemish, is losing at Kansas. Everyone loses at Kansas, but double digits wasn't great. They've kind of found their way. They had a revenge win over Iowa State at home on Monday. And I don't mean to put more on this game for Houston and the folks, if anyone listens, that has anything to do with the game itself. But the game this weekend against Baylor is kind of the last test for last real test for a little bit. They get Cincinnati at home, beat them at their place, and played pretty well in doing it. Oklahoma has been kind of up and down, but more down than up lately. At Central Florida, I guess they've beaten good teams in Orlando. But then you get Kansas at home, and Kansas looks like they can't win a road game. So at Baylor this weekend is really going to be like a real tough test. And so we'll see kind of those holes we saw against Iowa State and TCU, communication lapses on the road, and those, like, have they fixed those kinds of things? And I think that's what makes an exciting weekend. Baylor kind of needs this one too, though. There's a lot on the line for y'all.
Yeah. And it is a little disappointing that this could have been basically the Big 12 championship game, more or less, because if we came in after a win against BYU, we're 1 game behind, but only facing you guys once. So that would have been the tiebreaker in there. And I know you can't say it because of the jinx, but I'll say it. A Houston victory on Saturday more or less sews this thing up. More or less. Like, it's, again, any given day, right? In the Big 12, any given night. Yeah. But the last couple of games for Houston is much easier than Baylor's last couple of games. So it was still, and that's why I think Baylor fans hadn't really come to grips with the fact that they were that close to the Big 12 title. Like, if we had won against BYU, like, we would have been in full hype mode here. Like, this would have been all bets are off. Like, we could do this thing. But after Houston, it's at TCU on Monday, which is not easy at all. Home against Kansas, home against Texas. Not that Kansas is ever easy, but it's at home. And then at Tech. And they're looking for revenge too. So it's not an easy run-in for us. But in terms of keeping in like those top 3 seeds in the NCAA tournament, a win Saturday would go a long way.
Go a long, long way. And frankly, they've got a young star on their roster. It feels a lot like last year in that sense, I guess, from afar with Baylor. And I want to talk about some of the new faces you got there in Waco. But we've got some new faces here at Locked On, new friends from Aboda. Aboda is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies, toys for my little 8-month-old, etc. You can do all kinds of fun things to Aboda and get cash back to make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Aboda user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. So you can buy that flight you've been looking at, or honestly, sometimes just those groceries you've been looking for. I eat a lot. Okay, I eat a lot. Whatever you're looking for. Now, Aboda is all kinds of things other apps don't do. It gives you all kinds of different benefits while you're getting in higher point values for things that you're shopping for more often. So join the 50 million customers and earn cash back every time you shop for over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. I got to ask, do you go to Sephora? Do you got a girl, significant other goes to Sephora? Anybody?
She goes to Sephora. Yeah.
She goes to Sephora.
Yeah.
Right now, Aboda is offering our listeners $5 for just trying Aboda and using the code Locked On College when you register. So just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Aboda app, and start earning cash back with code Locked On College. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store. Use code Locked On College. Start save money today. All right, new faces. I got to watch Jacoby Walter some in high school from afar. I did not have to coach against that guy. That guy was really good. Really, really good.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what it's been like for the second year in a row, having a clear one and done type of talent. And like, he's still an 18-year-old kid, right? There's an adjustment period with that. What's that been like?
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of like the next step for Baylor as a program, that win the national championship. There doesn't seem like there's a better step than that, right? But then it becomes trying to sustain being a top team. And with that, in today's college basketball comes the one and dones. And so Keontae George was the guy last year. Fantastic player. Always kind of felt like he was an NBA guy, like his play style. He was great. He put up great numbers. I'm not saying he's bad, but someone like Jacoby Walter has felt like a better fit for Baylor, which what we've seen this year. And it's been up and down for him this year. And like the team, the downs are not as down as a lot of fans might think. Like he's still, even with a slump for like 4 or 5 games, he's still averaging over 14 a game as a freshman in the Big 12. Right. And that's something Scott Drew has talked about a lot this year of just like, guys, he's just coming in as an 18-year-old against the best competition in college basketball. And so I think he's another guy who projects obviously really well to the NBA. He's still projected as a lottery pick. He's got length for a guard. He's a knockdown shooter when he's on, and he's improved a lot defensively. He's very switchable. So the great thing, the thing that I love about Jacoby the most is even when he was in that shooting slump, he was doing everything else right. So the rebounds, the defense, the hustle, like he forced Scott Drew to keep him in the game, even when he wasn't knocking down his shots. And so that's something that has been super positive from him. Yves Missi in the middle, another freshman I am a huge fan of. He's a fan of the show as well. So if you're listening, Yves, happy Friday to you. But he has been fantastic and super efficient too. He's another guy who's like, it's just incredible how quickly he adapted to the college game and to the Big 12 game. He's a guy who reclassified. He's supposed to be a senior in high school right now. And he's one of the most efficient big men in the entire conference and therefore in the entire country. So he has just been fantastic. Both of them have been stalwarts in the starting lineup. So they've been huge lifts for this team. I don't know where this team would be without them. And it's funny, they needed a guard who could score. I mean, everyone needs that, right? But they especially needed one because one of their great scoring guards from last year will also be playing at the Foster Pavilion on Saturday, but not in the Baylor colors.
Yeah, LJ Cryer.
You have any idea? Yeah, it's LJ Cryer. You got it, man.
He's pretty good. He's pretty good. What's been awesome about LJ this year has been, frankly, for a team navigating the Big 12, having a guy like him that's seen it before has been great. Like he is the kind of guy that knows, you got to hit the big shot to kind of cool the road environment. He has had his own shooting slump. I don't mean to say it's in a perfect season or anything. But he also has had several games where like the offense was kind of drive and collapse the defense and just hope he's out there somewhere open, right? Like just like hope that he is out there somewhere. In football, you say he's down there somewhere, and basketball, it's LJ is out there somewhere and we're just going to find him. It is, I mean, I'm telling you things, it is bombs away with that guy. It is all things from deep. He's got a nice little floater and stuff like that, but it is all deep game.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how the adjustment has been defensively, because from what I saw from some videos, obviously cherry-picked videos, there was some struggles early on in the conference schedule, and he obviously knows the Big 12, and we play pretty aggressive defense here. It's not Kelvin Sampson level, but that was something he struggled with at Baylor a little bit, I think mainly because of his size, but I'm guessing with how much he's out there, no matter how good an offensive player he is, he must have come around on that end.
Yeah, and I will say in full disclosure, he generally gets the third best perimeter assignment, or
Okay,
he's
all right.
like between Jamal Shead at point and Emanuel Sharp at the other guard slash wing type. He's usually getting a third best option. So it's not like he's guarding the top guy on the other team or anything like that. But I do think I've seen growth in him over the course of the season. He's still an offensive first guy. I don't think that's any secret.
Mhm.
But it'll be interesting to see what Baylor folks are saying afterwards, because I'm assuming that's clips to chuckle at or whatever. I don't know how many Baylor fans have
Yeah.
watched his defensive side of basketball this season all that much. And I do think
It's
he's
all
gotten
cynically, yeah.
no, of course, I would do the same. I'm not judging anyone for it. But I think he's gotten better. I think the real trick is that it felt like early in the year, you saw him for several years, but it felt like early in the year it was like he'd make the gamble for the Sports Center type of steal, and oh, I missed it. Now I'm just out of the play, right? And then they
That's
score
right.
behind him or whatever. And I feel like there's both less gambling like that and just playing sound defense, and then also like because he's doing it less, I think it catches people off guard. He gets it a little bit more now because he's doing it less. Suffice to say, I've been impressed, to say the least. I
Good.
mentioned like the BYU game. He had 23 points in that game. I mean, on the road at BYU for the team's first Big 12 road win. I mean, that's pretty big leadership as far as actions go.
Yeah,
Um, Invaluable kind of leadership as far as actions
yeah,
go. But he's growing as a defender. Is a long way to say it.
yeah. I'm interested to see what his reception is on Saturday. Genuinely, like I think it'll be booze. I really do. And that's I mean, this is not like an attack on LJ's character, and I don't think
No, yeah.
anyone is under the illusion that he's a bad guy, but there was always something a little off in his time at Baylor. Like, I don't know. He kind of naturally looks doomy gloomy, right? Like that's not something he could really help.
My
But
my younger brother described it like Houston people as like the T-Mac guys. Like it's just like something like
yes,
Tracy McGrady,
yes.
like the same kind of thing.
It
It
almost looks disinterested, and I don't
He's
think that's
playing hard
true,
though.
but
He's playing
yeah,
hard, right? It just looks
yeah,
like it. Yeah, I get that. I do think he's invigorated. He's from Katy, which is a suburb of Houston.
yep.
For the folks that don't know anything about Houston, I think he's enjoying playing for Houston. I think he's enjoying playing for his hometown.
I think and I think when he hit the portal, that was like the only option from Baylor's fans' perspective. And to be honest, if we're talking about a program, like there aren't many better to go to as a guard than Baylor. And so when it was Houston, that made a lot of sense. It looked like, maybe he's just a homesick kid, but there's also people who thought maybe he just doesn't want to battle for his position. He doesn't want to, that sees Jacoby Walter coming down the pipeline and a couple of transfers coming in, and maybe he doesn't want that smoke, so to speak. And, he had come out and said something about wanting to play point guard more. And we were like, well, you're not going to be the point guard at Houston. So this is intriguing. And so it's stuff like that. And when he left, the former host of Locked On Baylor, Drake Toll, had reported from a source that he was going to go to Houston, and LJ's family dragged him and was like, no, that's not true. Stop reporting this. And then I think the next day he committed to Houston. So it was like, bro, why even do that? So there's a little animosity there. Again, it's not like LJ's been dragging Baylor or anything, but I think there'll be booze on Saturday.
Well, and frankly, there may be some of it too that's just like you're saying, like, hey, we just kind of wish you were still here.
Yeah, that's the other
wouldn't
thing. He's playing for the enemy. Like
right,
this
like
is an interconference transfer. Like I can't
right.
blame them for that.
This is a zero-sum game. They keep scoring, only one team wins. Like
Yeah. Yes.
at some level, as long as it stays like just booze and nothing outside of the basketball court, like
Yeah.
I would expect that, right? Like I would point out he helped. He was on the team that won a ring for it. Like I think that
Yep.
like some praise too, right? Once the game's over, maybe.
There's only so many Baylor players you can say that about. So
like 1 year worth, right? 1 year worth.
Yes. It's between 12 and 15. Yeah.
But I think, and I haven't talked to him or his family or anything like that. I mean, just report like I have, but I bet he is amped. It's like the way that he plays fits into this game well. He's going to walk into a brand new stadium there. And just the environment, like I think he's going to feed off that villain type stuff. We'll see if it works. Again, he's had some bad shooting nights this year, but I think he's excited about this one. Now, I do want to mention, if you're getting excited about things this weekend, you can make things a little more interesting. Basketball is back in full swing. Football is behind us. You can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. Now, Cam, peek behind the curtain for the audience. We have a recording before the line is out officially on this one.
Mm-hmm.
What would you guess the line is in this one?
I think Baylor will be a dog, and I think it's that BYU game was 3.5. I'm gonna go right around the same, 3.5, 4.5.
3.5, 4.5. See, I think I would take Houston at plus 4.5. First of all, I think Houston wins the game. Obviously, I'm surprised you said Baylor's a dog.
It's rare in the Big 12 at home, but I think this might be one of them.
Yeah, I think the truth is just that, like, I think between Sampson and Cryer, and honestly, we mentioned a laundry list of fun names earlier, but like these two schools have some bad blood in there, right?
Yeah.
And it will be interesting to see how that stadium plays out with it. Whatever the line is at the time you're listening to this, whatever the other interesting things you want to check around the NBA or other basketball games, quick bets, live game parlays, exclusive props, and more. But just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel is official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, so games is Saturday. We're anticipating booing Cryer. I think the kid Walter's going to have a big day. He's a very good athlete, very scary athlete. He's listed at 6'5". You told me it was 6'6" and change. I'd believe you, but I guess he is 6'5".
Yeah, long too, right? Long and lanky. Yeah,
super long. But those are the stars. We've listed the stars.
Well. Have we though? I was going to ask you about our guy Jamal Shead here. Is he gaining legitimate traction for Player of the Year? Because if he's not, he should be National Player of the Year.
I think the win over Iowa State really helped his case. And I think it really helped his case because it's a game, big Monday, 2 versus 6. Frankly, if we're being completely honest, there was no NBA basketball. We were after football season. A lot of people were watching it. I think that helped his case a lot because he also played incredibly well. He had 20 points in the second half of that game, took over it. He's not even
it's such a rare player that I don't think people, anyone, not just Houston fans, appreciate of like an elite two-way point guard who can score. Like that's all of those things.
It's completely in that order. He's an elite two-way point guard that can score. And when they need him to, like they did on Monday with Cryer and foul trouble, and so like he went out and got 20 second half points. But he only averages 13. He's not like
I think of that Texas game in Austin where and I think that's a difference between this Cougars team and the last couple. I know Shead has been on some of those teams, but like when you need buckets down the stretch, he can do that. Like you just said, I mean, he can go for 26, 28 if they need it. And that game was kind of back and forth, nip and tuck, tough environment in Austin. And he was just nails down the stretch.
Well, and you want to talk about the same way we're talking about Cryer and the energy and stuff this weekend. Shead, it would have involved walking across a freeway, but Shead could have walked to UT Austin where he grew up in Austin, right? Like he was that kind of close, not recruited to go to UT. At the time, the two programs were in very different places, and it was like, any kid that got the UT offer would have been silly to turn it down and back then, right? Couldn't have faulted him for taking it. Obviously, he had a lot on his chest in that one, right? Like a lot of stuff in that one.
He loved it too, didn't he? Like he loved it.
But no, I think you're pointing out, like, he's got games, if you look at his game log, where he's got 26, 29. He's got games where he's got 5. He doesn't necessarily want to score, but he does. Man. He orchestrates the offense, finds the right hands, finds the hot hands, and then on defense, it's like he's living in the other guy's jersey. Like he's just uptight the whole time. It's incredible to watch. I hope he is earning player of the year candidate kind of votes. I certainly think he's going to be the point guard of the year, but I guess Kansas thinks they have a guy that can do that too. I did feel like we talked about Baylor stars though, and I was going to ask you, do you have an X factor? Because honestly, selfishly, I kind of think the X factor is, does Jamal Shead have to be a scorer or not, right? But for Baylor, what is their X factor? That they win on Saturday. What thing went just right?
I want to go Jalen Bridges as my X factor because I like to use players. Because he's been an unsung hero all season long. But from what we talked about earlier, the guy I'm going to go with is Jaden Nunn, who is on a heck of a stretch. And the reason why I'm going with Jaden Nunn is because he is Baylor's probably third perimeter threat from the guard position, which means that sounds like LJ Cryer. And he's also their best on-ball defender, which could well mean matching up against LJ Cryer, probably against Jamal Shead, but we'll see. And I just think when he is aggressive, Baylor plays so much better. He is such a key to their offense. We saw that in the 2 games last week where he was great. And then we saw it with his foul trouble against BYU. They were a much different offensive team. And so, and his defense is just a given. I mean, he's a diet Davion Mitchell. He really is. And so he can lock guys down. He can also be really aggressive on the other end. So mine is Jaden Nunn. You're going with Jamal Shead scoring.
Well, so my thought would be, if they get to a point where they have to use him as a scorer, what does that look like? Because he is, the fault in Jamal Shead, the reason he's frankly not in the NBA right now is he's 6'1", right? And frankly, 6'1" with short arms, being completely honest. And, if you're putting 6'4s on him like you're talking about, and Houston's now like, we need you to score, and he's like, well, I've got this long, lanky, or you put Jacoby on him or whatever, like that could disrupt things a little bit. The other guy I would point to is Houston's power forward, J1 Roberts, I believe 5th-year senior, 5th year because that COVID year thing and how that all counts and all that, right? But J1 is 6 foot, about 8. Last year he played a small ball center with Jarrett Walker in the lineup. This year he's playing more of a true power forward. Has a great left hook. I know it sounds like we're boxing, but I promise a great left hook. And there's been times this year where he, over the course of a game, gets banged up, or of course the game is just like running ragged or things like that. And he can get in foul trouble when that happens. He is, honestly, and this is not news to anyone, they're very public about it, but like he's getting his knee drained every 2.5, 3 weeks. Like his body is banged up. And so how he's going, how he's moving, etc., will be important as well. Houston hasn't played since Monday. I'm sure that means he's probably got a knee drained sometime in between, like we're being completely honest. But I think that his motor will be important as well. And I anticipate it being high, assuming he's ready to go. I'm predicting a Houston win. We did that in the FanDuel bit. But I really think that what's interesting about this is the first time and only time being in the regular season, but the Big 12 tournament's around the corner. You almost feel certain you're going to square up against Iowa State a third time for us, or something like these things only get gnarlier and more important as we go on. Y'all have lived this. You've done this successfully the last handful of years. When you're seeing these teams that many times in a year, what is Baylor? I mean, how do you survive that meat grind? I mean, Baylor has had success doing this, though. What's the secret? Because it feels like bodies will just wear down over the course of it.
Yeah, it's just such a slog. And Baylor typically boycotts the Big 12 tournament, and they'll just do their one game and be on their merry way. But anytime you're facing a team third time in this conference, like it's all the cliches, man. It's just, it's throw everything out the window. Like, everyone's tendencies, them inside out. It's not a lot of fun. I'll just say that it's not a lot of fun. I do kind of miss the round robin in the regular season where you just play everyone twice and you kind of know where you're at. But if it means we don't have to go to the Fertitta Center this year, I'm okay with that. Next year is a whole different story. But yeah, it's just truly like that third game. If the first two weren't a rock fight already, that third one is going to be a rock fight. Like, this is just how it is. And probably the second one too.
You mentioned losing the round robin. Your fans will know this, but I want to quickly explain to my fans. The Big 12 used to be every team played home and home because there were only 10 teams. That was your 18 non-conference or 18 conference games, and then you played a home and home with everyone, and then played the conference tournament. So every game would be a third time. Do you, Cam, feel like in a league where you can't do that anymore, like Baylor got kind of screwed?
No, I just preferred that. It was awesome. You knew everyone, and because you played them home and away. Baylor actually got pretty lucky with it this year. Basically with this game, Houston being just once and being at home, Iowa State being just once and being at home. That was a nice benefit for us.
Well, I feel I agree with you. I think y'all have a tough last stretch here of the season.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you felt about the whole thing. You had us at home. You get us at home. You had Iowa State at home. Home games for Baylor, and this is where I'll wrap.
Yeah,
have been interesting because never a dull moment, but it feels like you're watching ants play. Foster Pavilion, brand new. Folks at home watching it on TV. They're bigger than that. I promise. The people on the court are bigger than that. Aside from jokes, and I'm sure you got and heard plenty. What's Foster like?
Oh, it's great. It is fantastic. That's why you got to get there and not watch it on TV. For some reason, they did not factor in the TV cameras, and I'm not sure
they're
why.
encouraging people to come.
Yes. They'll say it as a joke too. Like, I think the camera's at the top of the arena. It is at the top of the arena. It is the last seats in the arena. But it has been just another world. I mean, the Farrell Center was just kind of, it was there. It was a place that they could play basketball in. This has been a true arena. It feels like just a smaller NBA arena. Like it does in that, like, it feels like you're walking into a basketball arena, not just a venue in which they play basketball. And it's been a huge home court advantage for Baylor that they have not had forever. And the crowd becomes a player in the game. So with that, that's why I like the Bears tomorrow.
Home court advantage is very.
I have been pumping the Houston tires this whole show,
so,
which I've basically done all season. So I can't leave here without predicting a Baylor upset victory.
I appreciate you circling back to your pick. Well, you did pass on back a lot, which is going to feel like you're stabbing us in the back if something goes that way on Saturday. Will you tell your former hosts, your co-host on your day gig, Drake really likes dragging Houston?
I don't know where this came from, and it's weird. I do a show with Matt Mosley now on ESPN Central Texas, and it really took till like this Iowa State game this week where he was like, sure, I just don't know about Houston. I don't know if they have enough scoring. And I'm just like, are you watching these games? Like, yeah, maybe it goes cold and they lose in the Sweet 16, but like they are a step above everybody else. See, now I'm back to pumping Houston's tires. So I don't know why it's been that way. But the people like dragging Houston. It's got to be a new kids on the block thing. I don't know.
Well, we're new, we're here, and we're excited about a fun weekend of basketball. We get to see the new arena. We get to do all those kinds of fun things, and take this first tour through the conference through some of the toughest places to play in it. Again, game tips off at 11 a.m. Central Time, CBS, Waco, Texas. All things fun this weekend. I'm your host of Locked On Coogs, Parker Ainsworth, joined by Cam Stuart. Now, Cam, I always wrap up with Go Coogs. I don't know. Sick'em? That's the Sick'em?
Yes, Sick'em Bears, baby.
Yeah. Go Cougs. Go
Yes.
Cougs.